Every time you ask ChatGPT a question, a silent machine somewhere gulps electricity. A single query may only use a few joules, barely enough to power a light bulb for a second. But what happens when a billion people ask a billion questions every day? What begins as a flicker becomes a flood. And behind every image generated, every phrase predicted, lies an invisible cost most users never think about. One that's quietly reshaping our environment. This isn't just about tech. It's about ethics, energy, and a question many of us are too afraid to ask. Should I feel guilty for using AI? Let's trace the path of your prompt, from your device to the earth it scars. AI doesn't live in the cloud. It lives in chips, in data centers, in machines that demand rare minerals like gallium, cobalt, and germanium. Minerals mined at great environmental and human cost. Gallium mining, for example, generates significant toxic waste and is heavily concentrated in regions like China, which controls over 98% of the global supply. These minerals are essential for building advanced semiconductors capable of handling the parallel processing required by AI. To manufacture these chips, fabrication plants require ultra-pure water, massive clean rooms, and extreme energy inputs. In fact, the global semiconductor industry consumes over 1.2 billion cubic meters of water annually. For context, Apple estimates that 99% of its corporate water footprint is tied to chip production in its supply chain. And while water is technically renewable, most of this usage happens in water-stressed regions, contributing to local shortages and ecosystem disruption. Then comes the training. Large-scale AI models like GPT-3 and GPT-4 require extensive computation to ingest and organize terabytes of data. Training GPT-3 alone is estimated to have consumed 1,287 megawatt-hours of electricity, enough to power over 120 U.S. homes for a year, and emitted over 500 metric tons of carbon dioxide. And that's just one model. With dozens of startups and tech giants training their own proprietary systems, the total footprint scales fast. Historically, training was the biggest environmental hit in AI's life cycle. But today, usage has taken over. That's because once a model is deployed to millions of users, the cumulative energy cost of serving billions of daily requests quickly surpasses training. One paper found that for popular models like ChatGPT, usage emissions exceeded training emissions within 2 to 3 weeks of launch. Each prompt might seem lightweight, 3.6 joules to process a text request, 79 joules to transcribe speech, 1,700 joules to generate a single image. But scale that by hundreds of millions of users, and it adds up fast. Google's emissions rose 48% between 2019 and 2023, largely due to growth in AI services. And while companies often tout efficiency improvements, they rarely account for the rebound effect. As AI tools get faster and cheaper, people use them more, and often for more trivial tasks. AI models run on hardware that consumes enormous power. NVIDIA's latest GPUs, like the H100 or upcoming Blackwell chips, draw 700 watts or more each. Data centers hosting AI workloads often deploy thousands of these GPUs in parallel. A single AI data center can draw over 100 megawatts of power, comparable to a small city. The U.S. Department of Energy estimates that by 2030, data centers will consume up to 8% of the nation's electricity, with AI accounting for the bulk of new demand. Power consumption is only half the story. These systems run hot, so hot they require massive cooling infrastructure to stay operational. Most data centers use water-based cooling, either through evaporative towers or closed-loop systems. Training GPT-3 reportedly evaporated 700,000 liters of clean water, water that could have gone to drinking supplies or agriculture. In the long run, the expected water footprint of global AI infrastructure could rival that of mid-sized nations. Cooling also concentrates environmental strain in specific regions. In places like Ireland, AI data centers now consume over 17% of the national grid. In several U.S. states, like Virginia and Oregon, data centers already account for over 10% of electricity demand, forcing utilities to delay coal plant closures. AI's explosive growth is disrupting green transition timelines, and transparency is scarce. Companies like OpenAI, Google, and Meta are under no legal obligation to report the energy or water used to train their models. Nature and Forbes have published investigations showing how difficult it is for scientists to gather environmental data on these tools. The result? We're flying blind into a resource-intensive future with no accountability. There's a common counter-argument. AI can be used to solve climate change. And that's true, partially. AI can model weather patterns more efficiently than traditional systems. It can optimize power grids, reduce waste in manufacturing, and suggest low-carbon transport routes. Google hopes to avoid 1 billion tons of CO2 emissions through AI-assisted efficiency. But here's the issue. Most AI usage doesn't go to these tasks. It goes to entertainment, automation, marketing, and productivity. AI-generated art, emails, chatbots, and social content make up the vast majority of interactions. And while these tools can save time, they rarely displace carbon-heavy alternatives. In fact, they often enable new consumption. Microsoft, for example, partnered with ExxonMobil to boost oil extraction using AI, resulting in 50,000 additional barrels of crude per day. So while AI can be green, it isn't inherently so. It depends entirely on who's using it and why. So let's return to the question, should you feel guilty for using AI? Probably not. Guilt is unproductive. But responsibility? That's where change begins. You're part of a system that consumes real, measurable resources. But that also means you're part of the solution. You can reduce frivolous prompts. Use AI only when it replaces a more resource-intensive task. Support regulation that mandates transparency from AI providers. Push for greener hardware. Demand full lifecycle disclosures. And don't let corporations off the hook. Tech giants are pushing this responsibility onto users while avoiding it themselves. But real accountability starts at the top. Collective action, voting, and public pressure can force change, just like it did with emission standards and plastic waste. This is EyeTech, and this isn't just a question of progress. It's a question of consequence. If you've made it this far, share this video with someone who still thinks AI lives in the cloud. Subscribe for more deep dives into the tech shaping our lives. And drop a comment. What do you think the real cost of AI will be?